Hi everyone, I'm Arya and I'm going to show you how to do a lattice Tunisian crochet today. Now the lattice stitch is a type of Tunisian crochet, so before you watch this video, make sure that you've watched the Tunisian crochet video that we put up recently. To start the lattice Tunisian stitch, I've done a foundation chain as you can see here, and I've done one row of regular Tunisian stitches. So by going into the bump at the back of the chain, pulling up a loop for each one and coming back with a regular Tunisian stitch, pulling through 2 loops each time. If that doesn't make sense, again, I recommend you watch the previous video on Tunisian crochet and come back to this one. Beyond this point, we're going to do the stitches slightly differently. Remember again to take a hook which is slightly larger than you would normally use and that your stitches should be kind of loose. To start, put your hook behind 2 of these vertical bars instead of just one as you would for a regular Tunisian crochet and pull up a loop. Then go behind only the first of those 2 bars and pull up another loop. So you've got 2 loops from 2 loops, but you're doing it differently from a regular Tunisian loop. Again, for the next 2 bars, pull up a loop through both and then go behind the first one and pull up a loop. And the next. Behind 2, pull up a loop and then go behind the first of those 2 bars and pull up another loop. And now for the last 2. Notice that this last stitch is not just a bar, but it's a whole stitch on the side of your work. So make sure to get both of those. Pull through your whole stitch and the bar, and then go into the bar, pull up a loop, and there you have it. So now you have these stitches in pairs and 1 stitch still remaining like that. Now go through these the way that you would for a regular Tunisian crochet. Pull through the first one just by itself, and then for the rest pull through 2 at a time. Pull through 2, pull through 2, 2 again, 2, 2, 2, and the last 2. There you go. So you can see the beginning of a different pattern forming. For your next row, go into the first bar by itself and pull up a loop. And then repeat the row the way that you did before. So go through 2. It's going to be 1 from this cluster and 1 from this one. Go through 2, pull up a loop, go into the first one and pull up a loop. Now this one and this one, so like that, and pull up a loop. Now go into the first one and pull up a loop, and again through these 2, pull up a loop, and now go through the first one and pull up a loop. Now for your last stitch, which is again a whole stitch on the side of your work, which can always be a little tricky, but make sure you get both loops of that stitch and pull up a loop. So this should give you another set of stitches, except they are now bunched differently. So earlier you had this one on its own, and then you had pairs including this one. Now this one's on its own and all the others are paired together, although this one doesn't look it very much. pull through the first one by itself and then pull through 2 every time. 2, yarn over, pull through 2, and all the way to the end of the row. I've noticed that in these tutorials I say up until the end of the row very often. I suppose that's how crochet works. You should be able to see now how this forms a triangle and this forms a sort of upside down triangle. And this is the pattern that's going to get repeated throughout. Continue these rows now. So for row number 1, or let's call it row A, for row A, you always go into 2 loops at once from the beginning. And for row B, which would be after this one, you go into only 1 at first, and then the rest of them in pairs, the way that you just did. I'll do another 2 rows with you. Here you go into 2, pull up a loop, go into the first one, and pull up a loop. Now go into 2, pull up a loop. The first one, pull up a loop. It's always a good idea when doing Tunisian crochet to count your loops at the end of every row to see that you've got the correct number. It's very easy to accidentally lose 1 stitch or 2. And especially so while you're doing something like the lattice stitch. There you go, pairs, and this one is by itself. Pull through only the first one, and then pull through 2 loops all the way to the end. See, there it is again. Pull through 2, 2, and now the last 2. That was row A, and for row B, if you remember, go into the first one by itself, pull up a loop, and then in pairs. So go through these 2, pull up a loop, go into the first one, pull up a loop by itself, the next 2, pull up a loop, the first one, and a loop. These 2, pull up a loop, go into the first one, and pull up a loop. And now go into the final stitch at the end of your row, get both loops, and pull up a loop. And you've got these pairs of stitches again. Go through the first one, and then go through the rest in pairs. Pull through 2, pull through 2, only 2, pull through 2, 2, 2, and the last 2. Keep going like this. When you're done with also you can see the lattice pattern forming. You've got these diagonals and these diagonals, and they form a sort of crisscross pattern. When you're done with your piece, when you're satisfied with the length of it, you can go ahead and end it the way that I demonstrated in the Tunisian crochet video. And if you're making smaller squares and then stitching them together to make your 6x6 square, you can again follow the stitching pattern that I showed in the previous video. Good luck.